The farmer's market has some gorgeous fresh picked peppers and Italian herbs that were the source of inspiration for this recipe, fermented stuffed peppers with an Italian herb and spice sauerkraut. Although fresh garden or local market produce is best with this recipe, ingredients from a standard grocery store will work as well, especially if you make this recipe during the winter months when garden and market produce is not available. For this recipe, we will need fresh peppers. They can be hot, medium, mild, sweet, or a mix of all types. Fresh bundles of basil. These gorgeous bundles are from my local farmer's market, but remember, store-bought fresh basil will also work. A 3 to 4 pound cabbage, whole fennel seeds, some salt and water to make the brine, and a gallon-sized jar. If you don't have one, Amazon sells them pretty inexpensively. Not only for this recipe, but the gallon jar is great for other large batch ferments like sauerkraut or fermented pickles. I'll leave a link in the description for you if you're interested. Start by preparing the brine by adding the salt to the water. Mix to fully incorporate, then set aside for later use. Do not use a salt that has anti-caking agents added because these chemicals can cause a fermentation to fail. Read the ingredient label to know whether or not your salt contains them. The best salt to use is one whose ingredients say salt and only salt. Inspect the cabbage for issues. If the cabbage is from your garden, then you're familiar with the outer leaves looking a bit like this. Rinse off what can be rinsed and then remove the outer leaves. Cut off any remaining buggy parts. If using store-bought cabbage, no need to wash. Just remove the scrubby or the wilted outer leaves. With the next layer of good condition cabbage leaves, remove and save a couple of them and keep them intact as much as possible. Set them aside for later use. Quarter the cabbage. Then cut out the core. No need to throw it away. You can use it with the other vegetables to make a nice soup stock. Slice the cabbage quarters into strips like this. Then cross-slice again. Place in a large mixing bowl. Next, we're going to freshly grind the fennel seeds. The fresh grinding releases incredible flavor that you don't get with the old oxidized stuff from the grocery store. Plus, the fresh grinding releases bioactive nutrients such as polyphenols. But if pre-ground is all you have available, then certainly use it. Place the seeds in a little grinder like this, and a moment later, voila! Some people don't like the fennel, so if that's the case, swap out the whole fennel seeds for some dill or caraway seeds instead. You'll freshly grind them just the same. Sprinkle the ground seeds into the mixing bowl with the cabbage. Pour all the brine over the cabbage and toss to mix everything together. The salt is going to begin working on the cabbage, softening it and pulling out some of its natural juices. This tenderizing of the cabbage will make it more stuffable into the peppers. Next, slice one of the bundles of basil and add to the cabbage. Toss to incorporate. The cabbage needs to rest in the brine for at least 2 hours. Meanwhile, you can prep the peppers, do some cleanup, get the jars ready, run errands, work in the office. I'm sure there's a lot to do in your busy life, and the cabbage can rest in the brine for up to 6 hours even. So it's not a problem if those errands take longer than expected. Select the peppers that are stuffable. In other words, they have some rounding in their body and a nice wide top that will allow the cabbage to be stuffed inside. A narrow section down here is okay, so long as at least the upper body has some girth. This nice large jalapeno is perfect. So is this Anaheim pepper. This is a mini sweet bell pepper, and this is a large sweet bell pepper. If you have lots of large peppers, then it's a good idea to also have lots of little ones too, so that they can be stuffed in the gaps. You'll see what I mean shortly. Slice off the top of the pepper, then pull out the inner portion with the bulk of the seeds. Tap out the remaining seeds. We won't be using the tops, so you can compost them or add them to that vegetable stock that you're going to make with the cabbage cores. Smaller peppers like this one need a little paring knife to cut the center out if your fingers won't fit in there. Repeat these steps with all the peppers. Wash the jar in hot soapy water. Be sure to wash the jar lid and the fermenting weight as well. Set the equipment on a clean kitchen towel until ready for use. It's been a couple of hours and the cabbage resting period is complete. With clean washed hands, massage the cabbage a bit more, taking note of the tenderness transformation that has taken place. Take a large handful and place it at the bottom of the jar. Then take the other bundles of basil and place them at the bottom of the jar with the cabbage. Take up your pepper and stuff some of the cabbage inside. I have found using a chopstick like this can help with the stuffing process. Once stuffed, place it into the jar and repeat with the next pepper. Here's an example of how some little stuffed peppers are going to fill in the gaps that the big peppers aren't suited for. Now I'm back to stuffing the peppers and adding them to the jar. Take some bits of cabbage and use it to stuff more of those gaps that the small peppers can't fill. I could have actually started this additional step a few peppers ago, but it'll be fine. Take some scoops of the brine and add it in. This can also be done earlier in the stuffing process as well. You don't have to wait as long as I did. Then just keep on with the stuffing and squeezing. I'm going to get this little last pepper into the top here, and as you can see, I filled the container up to the jar threads. At this point, not all the brine is going to fit in, but we don't want to miss out on those remaining spices in the brine, so strain it to capture those ground seasonings and place them into the jar. Remember those cabbage leaves we set aside from earlier? We're now going to use them to create a topper, which will help hold everything down. Set the jar on a plate to catch any brine overflow that may occur when you use your fist to press everything down once more. Now I'm going to squeeze that weight in. This is going to be a really tight fit, but I think I can press the lid down hard enough to capture the jar threads and hold everything securely. I'm using a fermentation lid for this gallon jar, but it's definitely not required. Simply use the original jar lid by placing it loosely on the jar, yet closed. The loose fit will allow the fermentation gases to escape, and therefore the jar won't need burping. Look at these gorgeous peppers. Wow! For the fermenting process, keep them on the countertop at room temperature for 7 to 10 days. Now don't exit out. We're not done yet. I'm now going to share with you what to expect during the fermentation process, how to end the fermentation, and how to store it long term. Typically in about 24 to 72 hours, you will notice lots of bubbles forming. This is a good thing because it shows that the beneficial bacteria responsible for the fermentation are active and proliferating. Colors will shift from bright and vibrant to more muted tones. The brine will also transition from clear to cloudy. These are normal occurrences and signs of a successful fermentation process taking place. So after the fermentation period of 7 to 10 days, how will you know for sure that the fermentation is safe to eat? I'm going to answer that question, but first please allow me a moment to say thank you for watching my video. I love teaching fermenting and put an immense amount of time and energy into the videos I create. I'd be so appreciative if you bought me a cup of tea. The $5 donation helps me keep doing what I do so that you and others around the world can become confident and competent fermenters. And now back to the pepper program. The fermentation period needs at least 7 days, and the reason why I don't recommend longer than 10 is because the peppers will ferment quickly and could become mushy if allowed to ferment longer, such as 3 or 4 weeks. This shorter fermentation period will ensure the peppers retain enough structural integrity to hold together. However, fermented peppers will be soft and tender, so remove any expectations of crispy and crunchy. If yours become too soft for your liking, with the next batch, shorten the fermentation period. Here are my peppers on day 7, and I'm going to end the fermentation. I'll start with taking a look inside. A healthy fermentation should have a soury sweet smell. If it smells foul or offensive, that means bad bacteria took over and the fermentation failed. If this is the case, do not eat it, rather just throw it away. However, if yours has that soury sweet smell, no mold present, then you are good to go. With my fermented peppers here, everything looks and smells healthy. So I'm going to remove the cabbage leaf toppers and take a taste test. If your refrigerator is like mine, a gallon-sized jar will not fit. So from here, I'm going to transfer the contents to smaller washed and clean quart jars. You may ask, why not just put everything in small jars to begin with? Well, you can if your peppers are small enough, but I was fermenting some large peppers that would not fit. They fit now because the fermentation process has made them more tender and flexible, but originally they would have snapped in half if I were bending them the way I am now. This is that wad of basil. Definitely don't discard that, and I'll show you one of the ways I use it with my meals in just a moment. Place the jars in the fridge for long-term storage where they'll last 6+ months. Okay, here's a little of that fermented basil. I'm going to pull the leaves off first, then slice them up. These are sautéed garden vegetables. I'm going to put them over some rice noodles. Add some fresh garden tomatoes, some garden corn, and then top everything off with fermented basil. It is a fantastic flavor that is so good. On the side is a fermented pepper that I'll slice up as I get into that. Add any kind of sauce that tastes good to you. Add some chicken or some other meat to the dish, or if you're vegan, leave it as is with the veggies and noodles. Everyone can enjoy this meal the way they like it. Let me know in the comments section if you made this recipe and how you enjoyed it. Plus, I've got an entire playlist of delicious probiotic fermentation recipes that you can check out right here. And if you want to explore all my favorite fermenting gear, visit my website at cleanfoodliving.net. I'll see you next time. Bye for now, and happy fermenting.